Kei ngā mātāwa ko te mutu taumai ki te hui. Ko Mihingarangi tēnei e mihi atu nei kia koutou katoa. Welcome to the Hui, Māori current affairs for all Aotearoa. E taro ake nei. It's the jewel in Tāmaki Makoto's crown and it's in crisis.
It's a story of generational deprivation and exploitation.
We find out what's happening under the surface in the Hauraki Gulf.
It absolutely is a wake-up call.
Then he's experienced bittersweet success in the top kitchens of Europe.
The pressure and the toxicity of the industry just all compounds and, blows up.
Now he's home, creating uniquely Māori flavours.
Europe has provenance, we have whakapapa, which is powerful, right?
We meet Māori chocolatier Tom Hilton. Tahuti mai. It's the blue jewel in Tāmaki Makoto's crown, the playground and pātaka kai of Aotearoa's biggest city. But below the surface of the Hauraki Gulf, an environmental catastrophe is unfolding. Sarah Hall spoke to tangata whenua about their efforts to restore Tikapa Moana to its former glory.
Tikapa Moana, the Hauraki Gulf, a 4,000 square kilometre stretch of water that's one of the great marine taonga of Aotearoa. But it's a stretch of water severely under stress, overfished and overharvested. Quite simply, the Gulf is in crisis.
I would say it's almost in its last throes of death.
That bad?
That bad.
But all hope is not lost, as kaitiaki, iwi are doing all they can to protect the Gulf. Rāhui are in place, and Māori scientists are at the forefront of research into how we can recover.
Māori have been custodians since time immemorial, and what we're seeing now in the 21st century is making best use, best practice of everything that we have in our toolbox for survival.
It's hard to believe how plentiful kai moana, especially shellfish, once was in the Hauraki Gulf. Giant koura were huge and easy to catch. Now they're functionally extinct. Scallops and paua are non-existent, and the mussel beds have all but disappeared. Here, on Waiheke Island, stocks have been badly affected. Hiri Aroha skipper from Ngāti Paua.
Living off the moana, when I was a child, to the state it's in now, where my grandchildren and my children cannot just go out and harvest and get a kai. For most species, it's all gone.
So badly depleted, in fact, that in June, more than 100 divers surveyed all of Waiheke Island over an 8-week period, looking for koura. They found just 22.
It used to be a delicacy on our tables, but no, it's been gone for some years.
Ngāti Paua placed a rāhui on the island 18 months ago, banning the gathering of shellfish and koura.
The thing with rāhui is that you put a rāhui down, you let it rest, you let it restore, and then you shift the rāhui to another location so that one can open up.
I'm just surprised that fisheries hasn't banned the taking throughout the entire Gulf of koura.
Exactly. So we've had to actively do that through laying down rāhui and simultaneously making an application to the Ministry of Fisheries for a 186A temporary closure.
So how did it go so badly wrong in the Gulf? Nicola MacDonald from Aotea heads the Ngāti Manuhiri Settlement Trust and co-chairs the Hauraki Gulf Forum.
If we keep exploiting the natural world, the taiao, then the taiao will give up on us, and that's what we're seeing. It's been generational take. The quota management system that we currently use in this country, it's not sustainable, it's not durable. We really haven't looked at how we're managing commercial and recreational fisheries.
And she puts the blame squarely on our fishing practices, including dredging, seine fishing and bottom trawling.
There's no place in the 21st century for these archaic methods. And if we want to be serious about restoring the Gulf for our future generations, then we actually need to say to all holders of quota, stop dredging the kutai, stop dredging the tipper, the scallops and everything else.
Just 2 spots remain legally open for scallops in the Gulf: Poteru, Little Barrier and Aotea, Great Barrier.
These 2 very special places, which actually are the nursery that feeds the entire Gulf, have been left open.
Nicola recently visited the beds with Niwa, only to find them destroyed.
Where there has been commercial dredging, those tipper have not returned. And anyone thinks that you can keep these beds open and continually dredge and they'll replenish themselves, you've got to be joking.
While iwi are fighting fisheries to put more protections in place, scientists are also working behind the scenes to implement a Mātauranga Māori approach. Daniel Hikurua from Auckland University.
Let's remember that Māori have been living in and on and around the Gulf for centuries, and they lived with it in a way in which they understood the cycles, they understood about managing themselves and the interactions with gathering kai.
Have Māori been given enough power, as it were, to lead the way?
On the one hand, you could argue, well, no, there's no genuine enabling facilities in some of the laws or many of the laws. But on the other hand, we see these really amazing things. We see Ngāti Paua, place of Rahui around Waiheke, in collaboration with most of the Waiheke community.
And the community has its own initiatives underway. Meet the Waiheke Marine Project.
We're looking at rewilding koura. We know that koura takes 6 years to grow to a catchable form, so it's a really long-term project.
They're also trying to replenish the seaweed destroyed by kina.
So with so few koura eating the kina and so few snapper eating the kina, means the kina have gone wild and they're eating all of their seaweed. So in the summertime, we go down and measure how much the kina have eaten, and we remove around about 800 per weekend, which we share to the community.
So overfishing has caused a clear imbalance in the Gulf. But it's not just what we do on the water that has created the crisis.
All the land of the catchments around the Hauraki Gulf used to be covered in native forest, and we've chopped that down either to create pasture land or to extract the valuable timbers. And as a result of that, millions and millions of tonnes of sediment has slowly through those 150, 160 years been washed down into the Hauraki Gulf.
Local iwi, including Ngāti Whātua, are reseeding mussel beds throughout the Gulf. Called the kidneys of the sea, kutai clean up sediment and oxygenate the water.
There is hope because through reseeding the natural kutai, the mussel shellfish beds, that goes along to the first steps of restoration.
And that's what you've done here, isn't it? This is the largest reseeding of mussels anywhere in the Hauraki Gulf.
Anywhere in the Hauraki Gulf, anywhere in the world.
Amazing. How many mussels were put here?
150 tonnes. We're not going to stop there because our goal is 1,000 tonnes.
Ngāti Manuhiri has also purchased 3 former police boats to use as surveillance, training up rangatahi to fulfil the roles.
So the vessel's primary purpose will be looking after the restoration of basically all the sea life, bringing the stocks numbers up, trying to control the recreational and commercial side of harvesting to make sure that there's plentiful shellfish still in the area.
There's no doubt Maori are leading the charge when it comes to saving the Gulf. And this month, Ngāti Paua will launch a 5-year project to look at how to protect the ocean using Māori practices.
Western science is good for identifying the issues, but not resolving the issues. What we are doing at the moment is bringing in all our mātauranga experts and coming from a Māori worldview in regards to the state of the moana and what type of practices can we put in place to support the restoration and regeneration of our moana space.
The kaitiaki of Hauraki are hopeful these waters can be restored to their former glory, a place of abundance for future generations.
If you could describe the Hauraki Gulf in 20 years from now, what would you like it to be?
Oh, in 20 years now, I'd like to see a beautiful, thriving Gulf where our marine habitats absolutely bursting with abundance, where I see the green-lipped carpet that our great-grandparents enjoyed actually in place, where we've got rimu, the seaweed growing, and that all of us together are enjoying this taonga that we've been given to look after for our next generations.
Imagine that. After the break, we speak to Corrections about concerns over visitor access to prisoners. Since 2021, the Department of Corrections has been restricting visitor access in its prisons. Corrections says it's a safety measure due to a staffing shortage made worse by COVID. But it means some prisoners haven't been able to see whānau members. The hui has been contacted by several inmates, including one at Waikeria Prison, complaining that the situation is restricting his children's ability to see him and isn't in keeping with the values of Corrections strategy Hokairangi, which aims to achieve better outcomes for Maori. So, to discuss this, I'm joined by Corrections Deputy Chief Executive Maori Tōpia Rāmika. Tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Mihingarangi.
How many more staff do you need for these visits to resume?
Well, currently there is a vacancy of just over 400 corrections officers across our network, across Aotearoa. We're currently recruiting heavily, and over the last 3 months we've enjoyed an application rate of just over 1,500 people. We're quite positive about this. You know, whānau visits, family visits are really important to ensuring the people in our care and management remain connected with whānau. We're doing everything we can to turn these on. The global pandemic, COVID, was really restrictive in that sense. The staffing capacities has exacerbated that. In saying that,
I think
we've got currently 11 prisons.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't think you're any different to any other organisation. You know, COVID has had a huge impact. But if you consider the vaccine rollout in 2021, February 2021, the government needed 5,000 vaccinators, and they trained them in 3 months. You know, why wasn't Corrections thinking like this at the beginning of the pandemic?
We've been very innovative in the way in which we've been ensuring prisoners remain connected with whānau. Throughout the pandemic, we've provided phone cards to all prisoners to allow them to remain connected. We've provided AVL and video connections for family to remain connected and do video calls. And like I say, we currently have 11 prisons that are open for visits at this time. The matter that you referred to at Waikeria, currently that is a prison that is open for family visits. I'm not aware of the blockage that's happening there for that person, but if there is one, that's something I'm happy to look at.
So let's just go back to the fact that we're still looking for 400 plus prison staff. You know, you've said in press statements that it takes about 3 months to recruit them. If the vaccination rollout can recruit people in 3 months and have 5,000 vaccinators ready 3 months later, why has Corrections not done this before? It's 2023.
Yeah, There are a lot of vacancies in the labour market at present across Aotearoa. Not just corrections is suffering from a shortage of workers. We're not alone in that. Our people come, our people go. This is something that we've had our eye on for some time, which is why we've been actively entering into spaces such as social media to recruit people. We've been actively utilising marae facilities and communities up and down the country over the last 6 months so that we can, bring people in. Last month was the first time in a number of months that we've had more people recruit and stay with corrections than we have leave. So those are all positive signs and signals.
The issue for corrections, though, is that when this government came in, it launched really it was incredible at the time that it was launched, Hauraki, and it's a strategy that's specifically to, directed and aimed at Māori. And I just want to read a little bit from it because it says whānau must have timely, tailored access and support and are able to identify and access the best pathway and services for effective rehabilitation, holistic wellbeing and reintegration to prevent future reoffending. So we've now had this really long period where prisoners haven't been able to see their whānau, haven't been able to see their kai tautoko, and it's working directly against your strategy.
That's not the entirety of the story. Corrections, we've been actively engaging with families and whānau of prisoners throughout the course of the pandemic. Just because we've been unable to at times allow for in-person visits, that does not stop us from interacting with whānau. I know firsthand some of the work that we're doing.
The strategy doesn't say that corrections should to connect with the whānau. It says that prisoners, for rehabilitation and the best rehabilitation, need to be able to see their whānau, their tamariki. And it's not only just good for prisoners, it's the best practice to stop intergenerational crime for the tamariki. So is Hauraki a failure?
No, not at all. We've actively been keeping prisoners connected to their families and whānau by way of providing free phone calls, video calls throughout the last couple of years.
Prisons? Can you guarantee that that's happening in all prisons? Because we've also been contacted by prisoners who say that they can't get any digital access. Have you got digital access for all prisoners that are unable to have in-person visits with their families?
Yes, all of our facilities have the ability to do video calls. That's something that we've been very active providing over the last couple of years. We currently have,
and how often,
of the 18
how frequent would a prisoner
Zealand,
be able to access that, that facility?
Prisoners are able to make phone calls at least a couple times a week. They are allowed to provide that daily, depending on the amount of time that they've got on their call cards. They can use that as they see fit. We generally try and provide video calls in most of our facilities for at least for prisoners at least once or twice a week.
Can we talk about, you just said your response to whether Hauraki was failing was absolutely not. So let's just talk about some of the other promises inside Hauraki, and one of them was that it would increase and build the competency, obviously, of Māori who would have a Māori worldview, because the whole concept is a Māori worldview. So can you tell us from, I looked at some of the stats in 2015-16, it was 20% Māori were, made up the prison staffing. What is it today?
I understand the entirety. Corrections is a large organisation, 10,000 kaimahi in our organisation. I understand the population of Māori staff is sitting at around 22%.
So you promised in a document 5 years ago that you were going to increase the capability of Māori staff because you had this new program that needed Māori to implement it, and yet you've got 1.6% more 5 years later. Is that good enough? Is that another failure?
No, not at all. I oversee a large workforce of Māori practitioners. We've grown our specialist Māori, kaupapa Māori practitioners in the organisation significantly over the last couple of years. They provide significant support and supervision to the rest of the organisation. We've equally got a significant good representation of about 20% of Māori across the organisation in leadership positions. So
how many would you like?
You know, we're on a journey.
How many would you like? What would be?
Oh, it's not. It's you know, that's in the eye of the beholder. What I'm more focused in on is that we've got Māori in the key positions that are relevant to the mahi at play. And I can tell you that I see a large group of kaupapa Māori practitioners that are working tirelessly every day to support the organisation, whether it be in the community or in custodial operations.
Okay, you've said you're really happy with the progress of the recruitment program, so when can we see those visits coming back? So if you say it takes 3 months to train a prison staff member, will we be seeing them in January 2023?
Absolutely. So, like I said, we've had a significant interest in the community in terms of joining the corrections ranks in all number of roles. It takes a number of months to onboard them, and that's something that we want to do that's safely and confidently. We're also turning on prison visits at the other prisons week by week. I know there is another one opening this week. And we're really pleased with the progress we're making in that space.
Kia ora, we'll check back with you come January. Tēnā koe e te rangatira.
Tēnā koe Mihingarangi.
Next, we open a Māori box of chocolates. Maori chocolatier Tom Hilton knows how bittersweet professional success can be. Born in Aotearoa and raised in the UK, Tom's now home creating luxury chocolates with an Indigenous twist. Kaya John Boynton, tēnei pūrongo.
Māori chocolatier Tom Hilton loves to indulge in his craft.
And that's what we do as chocolatiers, pastry chefs, bakers. We're creating nostalgia through taste.
He's worked around the world, even making chocolates for the royal family. But the high pressure of the hospitality industry almost became too much.
I think it took me to burnout. It took me to truly have a bit of a rock bottom, falling to the curb and picking myself up.
Now he's launching Ao Kakao, spreading the message of culture and identity through chocolate.
You know, we may be the other side of the world, but we do bloody good chocolate. And that's what I'm trying to portray. Tell the Aotearoa Te Akarete story.
Whenever Tom Hilton returns home to Takahiwai, just south of Whangarei.
Hey, Dad. How are you doing? Good. How's there's some chocolates. Good, thank you.
He always makes sure to bring a sweet treat for his dad, Patrick Hilton. For more than a decade, Tom's worked across the world as a pastry chef and chocolatier.
I think one thing that inspired me is, you know, when it comes to all the pavlovas and all the desserts we used to have.
Cooking runs in his whānau. His dad, Patrick, is a baker.
That was the big thing about being in the UK.
Teaching them how to do it properly.
Yeah, and then making them at home with you, your mum and your sister, and just making it as Kiwi as I could.
After his parents separated, Tom grew up in the UK with his mum. But the Ngāti Whātua, Ngāpuhi and Whakatohea Uri always wanted to reconnect to his whānau in Aotearoa.
I was going through a bit of an identity crisis. You know, I didn't know which side I kind of felt belonging to.
That was some of the things that used to upset me a wee bit with living away in the UK was you kids. I wanted you to bring you home so you could run wild like we all did.
So at 16, he moved back to Takahiwai to live with his dad, a tiny community famous for its rugby league club.
It was just really good, and obviously learning more about our culture, feeling like that missing piece that you always had that was missing. is slowly coming back into becoming whole. I guess it was a bit of a culture shock coming from schooling in England, you know, not going to school with any family, and then coming to school and realising some of these are your cousins. And
although happy to be reconnecting with his whānau, Tom was struggling at school until his hospitality teacher spotted his talent in the kitchen.
In a hospitality class, we learned how to be a chef, we learned how to cook, how restaurants run, and then she'd tell me all these stories of her time in London and travelling Europe, and this sparked the curiosity of...
Tom's curiosity led him to the doorsteps of revered Scottish pastry chef and chocolatier William Curley in London. Eventually, he worked his way up to becoming a pastry chef. But the pursuit of perfection took a toll, with Tom working 80 to 100 hours a week in a cutthroat industry. It's an intensity he struggled to shake when he returned to Aotearoa in 2017.
When I came back, I was horrible. I shouldn't laugh, but in the kitchen, I was constantly go, go, go.
The intense pressure of his career finally catching up with him.
Like, I've worked in pressure environments massively. It was more a culmination of a decade-ish of that intensiveness, and the pressure and the toxicity of the industry alone is just all compounds and, you know, blows up.
What was that rock bottom for you?
At one point, I just didn't really want to be here, and so I did attempt my own life.
Tom slowly found his way out of that dark place through the help of a life coach. He wasn't sure if he'd ever return to the kitchen, but making chocolate became an important step in his recovery.
Once I picked up the tools, it's like they never left, and it brought that love back. And chocolate is one of those things that can improve your mental health, to eat it, but working with it is just the same. So, you know, you're immersed in all that smell, the feel, the touch. That was my therapy, really.
Therapy which turned into Au Kakao, Tom's luxury chocolate business with a distinctly Indigenous flavour. Today, I'm in the kitchen with Tom, who's sharing some trade secrets.
How do you tell a good piece of chocolate?
You want to look at the shine. You also smell it. You can smell the different cacao notes, and then the best way to test if it's really good quality, apart from the look, the feel, the smell, is just simply put it in your mouth and try it.
Creating a strong Indigenous-made product is a driving force behind Tom's mahi.
So the beans come from a female-owned Indigenous farm in Samoa, and so I want to showcase these producers, so that's why I use these different products, you know. This form of sugar, which is maple sugar, specifically comes from the only Indigenous female-owned farm in the whole of Canada.
He's also combining uniquely Māori flavours into his chocolates. Some of the more creative flavours include fry bread, pawa, hangi and steam pudding bonbons.
You know, Europe has provenance. I think we have whakapapa, which is powerful, right? So telling whakapapa of cacao, where my chocolate comes from, the exact tree it came from, the exact ingredients that go in it and where they came from. Telling those people's story, because everyone has a story, right?
Today, Tom is finding balance, his connection to his whānau helping to guide him. He's planning to open his first store next year in Auckland. His next dream is opening an Indigenous chocolate school.
To see it carry on and carry on and carry on will be the best part. And to then see the first graduates then become teachers and just paying it forward. Like, that's the pinnacle for me.
Kua kāngia e au, he tino reka. Kua hiki na te hui e hoa ma, no horo mai rā. Nā te puna whakatonga rewa te hui I tautoko.